Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the This Week in Coworking podcast feed. I am your host, Hector Kolonas, and I am joined today by a fantastic guest. If you are doing anything in your workplace with Gen Z, you probably know about this guest, Danielle Farage. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. How would you describe what you do?
Well, the short version is I am a relationship therapist for Gen Z and people who hire them, but mostly people who hire them because they need it.
I love that. Just to clear the record, you are absolutely not a relationship therapist, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just got to clarify that. We provide tech therapy at my day job. So I also have to always clarify, I can help you with your tech. Everything else, you have to speak to a professional. So you're kind of the same, but with everything to do with Gen Z, right?
Yeah, I would say my main focus is talent retention, engagement, and sometimes talent attraction. Dance between the three of those, but my specialty really lies in the next generation of workers, really understanding their motivations, their desires, their desired outcomes as it relates to work. And I help organizations and really leaders understand the next generation so they can really better engage us, keep us around, and attract us to their organizations.
And obviously, co-working spaces are filled with workers, and some of them are different generations. So that's exactly why I wanted to have a chat with you. We met at an event a few months ago after having met online a couple of years ago. But for people who didn't get to meet you, tell us a little bit about your career story so far.
Yeah. So I would say when I got to university, I had this fascination with my siblings and people who I knew who had graduated from college and kind of that natural track that we're taught to follow. And I just noticed that a lot of the people who followed that track of going to work a corporate job after school didn't really love their jobs or their work. And it really took a dramatic toll on their personal lives. And I just kind of, as I pondered, what do I study in college? I focused on this one problem that I saw, which was that people were graduating and work wasn't really enhancing their lives. It was maybe making it a little bit worse. And I thought about, well, why is that the case? And I thought, oh, it must be the leaders who are making decisions that impact people right at the bottom of the totem pole that might not be in their best interest. And maybe they don't understand everyone in the organization and their motivations and desires. And so I wanted to be the person who could walk into any room, talk to people about what matters to them, and bring that information back to the boardroom to help them make better decisions about people at scale. And that's essentially what I do in my day-to-day through my content specifically, and now through workshops and keynotes, but essentially all about the next generation of workers. So after I decided this was the problem that I wanted to focus on, I ended up working in the HR tech world and also workplace tech. So I've worked within HR startups servicing organizations as they've gone through the pandemic, post-pandemic world. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but really just have been sharing my opinions online for the past 5 years and now beyond, and have turned it into a business that I can live off of, which is, again, a blessing to say.
That is fantastic, and it's truly inspiring. And obviously what you're sharing is resonating. I think the last count was like 24,000 followers just on LinkedIn alone. I'm pretty sure your podcasts have other volumes of listeners. I've heard you speak. We both spoke about AI in that event. We'll dig into a little bit about that in a sec. But obviously what you're sharing, it resonates. But tell me, what do you think about co-working? Like, do you co-work? Have you ever worked from a co-working space? What is Danielle's opinion on co-working? Totally to put you on the spot.
Yes, I love that. I love that question. One random fact is that I love opinionated people. So, of course, I try to be an opinionated person. I don't know everything. And I always say I have strong opinions, loosely held, my favorite quote. So I would say co-working, especially, we've seen the transformation of co-working over the past probably 10 years, right? We went from co-working and working from a third space or working from home, not really talked about, to being something that is extremely relevant to the conversation. I live in New York City, so there are, as of this moment, more membership communities and third spaces than there ever were before. So my hot take, I think co-working is probably the most relevant it's ever been, but it might be taking shape in ways that we haven't thought of before. It's taking shape in membership communities, it's taking shape in interest-based clubs and membership communities like Othership. It might be taking form in different ways. And again, work can happen in different places, right? So you could go to a place like Othership, which is like sauna and ice bath and whatnot, a new person that you're going to work with, a client, a partner, a coworker, someone who you just want to co-work with. But that doesn't have to always happen in a specific space dedicated to work. So I would say co-working, I think the location of it is a little bit more fluid. It could also happen at a coffee shop, right? So I would say, yeah, I think it's a lot more common for people to co-work, but also that place could be up for debate. It could be anywhere.
I adore that. And I love it because as you were talking, I'm like thinking about the things I put in the newsletter over the last, let's say, 6 months. And we've definitely mentioned that one of the hottest co-working locations in Manhattan is a gym where it just happens to be all the VCs, all the founders, all working out at the same time and doing sales calls from outside the sauna. And it's like, yeah, that totally makes sense. But also there's this whole new group of co-working adjacent type offerings of renting out your living room table or connecting with people around sports and having all these adjacent things. It all fits into the way I see the world as this ecosystem of work. Like you don't go to a workspace, you don't go to a home or office. There's all these messy middle places where it's kind of like,
for sure,
I need to go pick my kid up from school, but I also have a Skype call. So yeah, it's very interesting to think of co-working as a method of getting work done, where a lot of people in our industry are all about how do we get more people to know what co-working is? And the reason why I asked you that question is, as I like to think of you as the Gen Z whisperer, right? If this is what Gen Z thinks co-working is, do we rise to that challenge and make our spaces more accessible, more on demand, more part of the way you want to use our spaces? Or do we say, no, that's not what co-working is. You have to get a membership. You have to get something like that.
Yeah.
So my next question for you is, given that Manhattan has probably the third most dense availability of co-working spaces, what stops you as a Gen Z professional from using a co-working space every day?
I would say justifying the cost. Like I am a solopreneur, so I work for myself, by myself, and stuff is expensive. No matter how well my business is doing, I think it's hard to justify the cost if only one need is being met. I'll give you a great example. I've been involved with kind of adjacently, but I haven't yet purchased a membership from Fabric, which is specifically a co-working membership space for community builders. I will say I'm a big fan of co-working spaces that have a really strong differentiator and benefits that go along and align with the ICP, the client profile of the person they're trying to attract, right? So one of the perks of joining Fabric as a member and paying the astronomical fee of, I think it's around $300 a month, is you also get access to an event space. You could host an event there basically whenever you want, as long as you put it in ahead of time, because there's a lot of events that go on there now. They have 2 locations in New York. And so that's, I think, one of those types of perks that will really get someone over the finish line. I think another type of perk that I personally would want to see is like a gym. I was having this conversation with my boyfriend literally at the beginning of this year, talking about, well, he works from the office 4 days a week, but on that 5th day, is it worth it for us to invest in a co-working or third space? The main priorities we both want to work out. So joining a gym is already in our kind of frame of reference, and also having a place to co-work, but also the community aspect of that. We want to maybe meet other young professionals who are around here. We live kind of uptown, so there are fewer of us up here. So that social aspect. So it's actually extremely hard to find, even in New York City, a space that has those three things. And I think it's different for everyone, but I think that's really how these co-working spaces could be differentiating themselves and positioning themselves to attract the next generation, is really hitting on multiple different points and not just serving one need.
Very well said. And that's exactly why you've got companies like Lifetime Fitness, Equinox, and Chelsea Piers adding co-working to their gym memberships. It's interesting because gyms can add on co-working. It's very hard for a co-working space to add on a gym. I'm going to flip it to the other side. You've answered the question as a solopreneur. If I was an employer and I wanted to attract the best Gen Z workers, what am I looking for in a co-working space that maybe would go over my head if I was just looking for a traditional office?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing is, I was talking about this on my podcast today. There are different expectations for different people of different stages of their career and levels of an organization. And one of the things that I think Gen Z pays a lot of attention to is, are the same standards being held across the organization, regardless of level? So I would say one of the considerations is probably, from a co-working standpoint, is the space easily accessible to people who might be located outside of the metro area of New York, right? Is it easy to get to by train or public transportation generally? I think it goes into the consciousness of like the Gen Z mind right now. I would also say, a lot of Gen Zers are neurodiverse. I certainly am. So a space that helps with that kind of thing with the neuro-minded folks, I like a lot of natural light. Like if you are an employer and you're hiring or you have Gen Z workers, don't be afraid to have the conversation with them of, hey, we're thinking of finding a co-working space in the area. What are your top 3 priorities as far as space goes? Because asking actually gets you a long way, and it shows that you care and it builds trust. And if you can't deliver on one of those 3 priorities, be ready to answer as to why you can't.
Very well said. And it's very interesting because it's one thing to ask, right? I know that a few Gen Zers are entering the workforce, and if their CEO asked them what they want from an office, I kind of feel that they'd be like, I don't know how to answer that question. So we are seeing a lot of companies lean on show, don't tell. Like, we're going to give you access to all of New York's co-working spaces. You just go there, say you're with our company, we're going to pay for it, you go try it out. But then at the end of the month, we're going to see where you frequented the most and then ask you, why did you frequent there the most? What was it about that environment? What attracted you? Was it the people, the design, the brightness? Or is that a good strategy, or is that just assuming that people will go out of their way? So what do you think? Good plan, bad plan?
Honestly, I think it depends on the person, because I worked at a startup that was based in France, and I was the only US worker for a good amount of time. And they gave me the WeWork all access pass, and I used it a lot. Like, I used it at different locations. I liked the discoverability and the kind of excitement that goes into going to a new WeWork for the first time and seeing how it's different from others, and also the vibe of the people. So personally, I like that approach, but I know some people are a different type, right? Like, they like being told exactly where to go and they don't like the ambiguity so much. But yeah, just I guess keeping that in mind. But I don't think there's any harm to trying out a space and giving people the opportunity to gain access to the top co-working spaces in New York. I think that's a privilege.
Yeah, I like the way you frame that. And yeah, I totally know there's people like myself where I would wear the same outfit every day. Like, I don't want to make a choice. I have way too many decisions to make every day. Give me the same outfit. But then someone like my wife was like, absolutely not. No, would not happen. So I can totally see that different flavor and just letting your team kind of feel it out. We saw a really good use case or case study of Slack doing that, where Slack was like, okay, everyone can work from anywhere. And for a while, no one worked anywhere. Everyone just stayed put because they didn't want to make that first move. So they actually promoted some of the newer employees to be those community activators. So you're going to go there and you're going to organize like a meetup for all of the Slack people to come together. And then it kind of kicked off that utilization and that clustering that would have sort of happened naturally, but they needed that one person or those few people to be that magnet initially. So it's a really good way for folks listening in to kind of think about that. But I want to go to another piece, which goes back to when we met and were speaking at that event. Hat tip to Matthew for inviting us to that, where we were talking about the impacts of AI, right? Everyone is like, oh my God, it's going to ruin everything. And you and I were probably the only ones in the room like, no, it's going to be fine. And you brought up a really valuable point that I think many co-working space operators kind of gloss over, because it's interesting because traditionally offices, the landlord gave you the empty space, it's your problem to figure out. But the co-working space is kind of in that middle where they have to make it a little bit more interactive, but also personalized. And you brought up this topic of hyper-personalization. What does hyper-personalization when it comes to office space look like?
Yeah, so I'll give a little context as to why that came up in the first place. We were talking about the design of spaces, and I was saying how Gen Z grew up in a hyper-personalized world, right? Like everything is catered to us, our algorithms, our, the apps we download, our email, like everything is really personalized to who we are. And that is in order to optimize for efficiency, right? And I think in that kind of world, we're really uncomfortable when there is friction. So, for example, I'll use the most kind of physical example. When you have a tough time getting into a building, like last night I went to an event, I was on the list, I walk in, I give them my name. First I have to give them my ID, which is kind of annoying. Like, I'd like some facial recognition, please. And I pulled out my ID only for the guard to tell me that I'm not on the list. And I'm like, okay, well, I am, because I'm an organizer of the event and I got an email saying I'm on the list. So I'm definitely on the list. Aren't we in the age of AI where, this shouldn't even be a problem? I should just be able to walk into the building without stopping at a security desk or getting a printout, like one of those stickers. Yep. What is the sticker for and why do I need it? Like these are the types of things that your average Gen Zer is thinking. As someone who grew up optimizing for efficiency, those types of systems and the experience, I think the experiential aspect of walking into a building really should mirror that of hospitality, and the ease of giving your name, your ID, whatever, or just them saying, hey, nice to see you. Like, being welcomed because you told someone that you were going to be there at a specific time on a specific date. So that I would say that's one consideration, is like the efficiency of the way that things are moving. Just got really passionate there.
I love that. I mean, literally my day job is making sure the systems work so they get out of the way. So I love that excitement. Bringing it back to once you're in the building, how can it be hyper-personalized? What should we be thinking about that will make you more efficient in your day-to-day work if you had picked to use a co-working space?
Yeah, I would say actually the second one is super simple, which is just making sure that there are enough spaces for people to work out of. I mean this in two ways. One is the variety of space, right? Are there seats facing the window? Are there seats not facing the window? Are there individual booths? Are there kind of group settings? Are there conference rooms? Are there enough of them? Have you overbooked them? A lot of the time when I would go to a WeWork I would leave my apartment. And when we had employees at the startup I worked at, it was like, okay, we're all coming in from different parts of Manhattan and broadly New York, and we're making an effort to be here. And if we all arrive and there's no place for the four of us to sit at a desk together, what's the point? Right? So I think that's one of the major pain points. I would say another one is this is probably something that differentiates workspaces and co-working spots, for me at least, is the media rooms. And I've definitely walked into certain co-working spaces and there's like a media room, like if there's a podcasting room, and I'm like, whoa, that's a huge benefit, because so many people I know, including myself, I have 2 podcasts, but so many people create content, and like adjusting to the modern day worker, the average founder who also needs to develop their personal brand, like having spaces that are conducive to that, readily available, it's not an extra cost, is amazing. It's kind of like when my coffee shop around the corner stopped charging me for almond milk. It's like, I am a certain type of worker, and therefore I shouldn't have to pay extra, right? Because you're attracting me. It's just like the community membership example, right? Because I'm a community leader, I shouldn't have to pay extra within my community co-working space to plan or do events, right? Or host events at your space. You're asking me to take money out of my pocket, and you should have a space for me as a podcaster, founder, creator to record things in my day-to-day, because that's part of what I do. So like those types of examples, I think like getting into the mind of your ICP, and also being more specific, more workspaces and co-working places should be hyper specific to the type of worker they're trying to attract. Like co-working spaces for software engineers. I know that was a bit of a trend a couple of years ago, where I still vehemently agree with the need for those types of spaces. And I don't think that need is going to go away. That hyper-personalized type of space.
It's definitely making a resurgence now. This nichification of co-working communities is absolutely something, mostly coming out of the UK, to be honest. We're seeing co-working spaces for fashion brands, for creators, for podcasters, for Etsy sellers, or whatever it is, and like really owning that community, understanding what is a Monday to Friday. What does it look like to be in that industry? Like you said, podcasting, if it's part of your job, shouldn't be an extra thing. It shouldn't be something you then have to get, extra permission for or whatever it is. So I completely agree with you there. But you did bring up a point which I really want to hammer home to people who run co-working spaces, market co-working spaces, fill co-working spaces, and that all the things you've asked for, you can't search by that right now. You can't say, tell me every co-working space in Manhattan that gives me XYZ, is hyper-personalized, has great access. Spaces who are thinking about that and are doing it right, start making sure that's part of your positioning, making sure that the LLMs know that you have these capabilities. Put together unique packages for creators, for solopreneurs, for young companies, for example, because that's how people are going to start finding your spaces. Which brings me to a question for you: is let's say you arrived in London tomorrow for an event, you had 4 or 5 hours and you need to get work done. How would you find a co-working space today?
I'd probably go to Google search, Google Maps, and I would search for co-working spaces. Probably the first thing that I'm looking at is the vibe. Like Google Maps has a specific button under photos where you could look at the vibe. Vibes are everything as it relates to me and how I work. So I want to know that, what the space looks like, and like typically how busy it is, which you could kind of see from photos. Also, I'd say like flexibility wise, like there was this one co-working space I went to last year in San Francisco that basically charged you by the hour. And then they had like a full day, it was like $25. And they were like, we won't charge you anything outside of that. Like you can use our extra monitors, you can use the spaces that we podcasting room, like whatever you want. You could eat our snacks, like everything's up for grabs. And just like that upfront communication and trust, and also the fact that I was welcomed like I was a member from the second I walked in, like just the experience of it all was really, really positive and left a really nice feeling and impression. Yeah, so like that's probably what I would do. And if I couldn't find something that was really convincing, I would probably go to TikTok and try to do some extra discovery from a social media perspective and hear some creator perspectives, because that's who I am, right? It represents who I am and aligns with my needs as a content creator as well.
That's really interesting, because a lot of operators have asked me, why would we advertise? Why would we do things on TikTok? And I was like, well, who are you trying to get into your space? Right? It's how people search. I mean, exactly. I mean, considering like I was in a conversation this morning with someone about Google Maps, and they were like, yeah, we want to be able to make our meeting rooms bookable on Google Maps. I'm like, yeah, so does everybody. But nobody up until now has said, how do I make sure that our vibes result is good? And I'm like, this is just like the gap, right? We don't think of, I didn't even know there was a button that does that.
It's for restaurants too. So like and I will say this is a proven method for me as far as getting really great results. I go on Google Maps to find a restaurant and I go to vibes. Obviously I look at the menu because that's important, right? We always need the menu. But I also look at vibes, recent reviews, like from the past 2 months. 2 months. I'm talking like 2 months. Like, and if a place doesn't have that many reviews, that's also a red flag. Like recent reviews, it's also a red flag. Yeah, I think that's most of what I look at, and vibes, obviously.
That's so interesting. So I got a question for you. I'm so inspired by the way you think. So like, tell me to stop at any point. What I was going to ask you is, a lot of spaces, it's not like a restaurant. They don't have hundreds of people a night, right? It's not like a hotel where it's transit. Like sometimes they get bad reviews and sometimes they are ridiculous. When you see a bad review, how does it impact your rating? Like, what are you looking at in a bad review to be like, this is a space I don't want to visit?
For sure. I would say it depends what my priorities are. So I'll stick with the restaurant example just because it's the easiest one. For a restaurant, if I really want to eat good food. That's my priority. Want really good food. So I'm going to look at the reviews from that perspective as someone who's looking for really good food that stands out. And if I see a review about the service, I don't really care about the service because that's not really why I'm going to a restaurant. I could get good service at my diner, but that's not what my priority is. So I think the same applies for a co-working space. I'm looking for a co-working space to plan an event, right? Okay, I'm going to really focus on the vibe of the room. I'm really focused on going to a co-working space where I love the people. So that's my priority. I'm going to look for those reviews. And if there's a bad review that says, oh, the people were nasty to me, I'm definitely not going to go there. For reviews, I'd say like the ratio is like 1 bad review. You need to negate that with like 4 good reviews. And I think it's totally kosher to ask people to review your business. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. We are in the hospitality business. And my dad is Israeli. So like you best believe in the early days of the business, he was telling me and all my friends who, we went for free. It's indoor go-karting, by the way.
Amazing.
It's called RPM Raceway. And he was saying shamelessly, like, oh, can you go review us on Google? It really, really matters. And it does. And I get it. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
That's great. I love that ratio. What about like owner responses? Do you ever read them? Like when there's a bad review?
Yeah.
Like the only reason why I asked
is
I've asked
today, actually.
I asked so many people this, and like the way they think about reviews is so different, because everyone's like, why isn't there just a rating system for co-working spaces? I'm like, rating on what? And that's why I'm asking you these questions. So do responses matter when you look at reviews?
I think so. The worst thing is if you respond and it's like super generic. If I'm reading responses and I feel like they were written by AI, you're better off just not responding. Like, how many reviews are you really getting that you can't actually write out a thoughtful answer or a response if they feel very sterile? The second thing is, if someone writes a bad review, all you really need to do is follow up personally with that individual. You probably can find their email. It's not that hard. And say, like, I'm so sorry that you had this experience. Like, I'd love to hear more about it if you're willing. And I'm going to reverse the charge on your credit card. Like, the customer is always right. And I think sometimes we lose that a little bit. Once you make it right with someone, they're maybe willing to either retract the review if you explain to them that that's a big deal for the business, or at least change it so it's less harsh, update it so people know how it was handled. A bad review doesn't always tell the full story. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely coming to the review out of a place of empathy, right? If you reach out and you're like, well, we obviously disappointed you, we upset you. Let's figure out what that looks like and address it from there. I could literally sit and speak to you all day, Danielle, but you're actually going to be doing something in real life with a whole bunch of great people at South by Southwest. Do you want to tell people about that and what it is and who should attend?
For sure. So I have been working on this concept for a couple of years. One of my core philosophies is Friendtorship, which was born out of my natural experience of being a young professional and learning from people who are older than me, younger than me, reframing how I think about my network as less about, this is work, this is sterile, this feels very impersonal, to more personal forward, I would say, in my relationships, thinking I could befriend people and come from that kind of authentic place and build business in that way. And also the belief that generations have a lot to learn from each other. It's not just one way. It's not just about mentorship. So I essentially took this idea with the help of my friend Morgan. We pitched to South by Southwest, and we're doing an official meetup with South by. So at the event, there's a lot going on, panels, a lot of chaos, a lot of brand events. We basically are providing a space for people who want to meet people of different generations and kind of get out of their bubble, their world, and also provide a bit of a respite between all of the chaos of the event and just meet people who you might relate to on a personal level. So that is what we're doing. I'll likely be around for the weekend of South by, and then I have a speaking engagement to get to right after. But if anyone else is going, please reach out to me. We're also looking to partner with some brands, give people some swag, some goodies. That's what we're doing.
I love that. And I'm going to put all those links in the show notes as well so folks can get that and reach out to you and connect. I only have one ask for you, and that is, if this works well at South by Southwest, would you be open to doing similar things in co-working spaces like in New York?
For sure. I used to be at WeWork as a customer, and I was just always like, oh, they should bring back WeWork Labs. I'm a big fan of having content, having events going on within a space. Even if it's after hours, you never know who needs to hear what or how someone's feeling. I think more people want more of that intentional gathering. So for sure, consider me signed up for a Friendtorship workshop wherever you are. If you're listening to this, I definitely am a big travel girl, so I'm happy to come to any country, any state. Just sign me up.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. Bye.